previous episodes, we've talked about how to take care of ourselves, how to recognize signs of struggle, and how to find the right resource for us. In today's episode, we want to go past our individual self and learn how to be there for other people, how to support the people around us, our friends and family, if they're struggling with their mental health or if we suspect that they're struggling with their mental health.
So why should it even matter that we know how to be a better support to others? Didn't we just finish talking about how we need to take care of ourselves? Well, it is important to take care of ourselves, but we'll actually see that by taking care of others, we are taking care of ourselves. So this doesn't mean that we have to neglect our needs. We still need to be full in order to overflow, but we do need to take care of others too. And we'll actually see in John chapter 15, verse 11 to 12, the Lord is explaining to us how is it that we can be joyful. He says that it is by loving others, it's like being like Him to others, that we actually fulfill our joy. So basically, by helping others, we're also helping ourselves. And this can be serving God by also serving others.
Remember that signs of struggle could look like big changes in someone's life or behavior. We invite you to watch our episode 1 to really get to know how to recognize those signs of struggles. Now, here are 7 tips on how to support our friends and family if we suspect they're struggling with their mental health or if we know that they're struggling. So tip number 1 is remember that you're not a mental health professional. So your job is not to be their therapist or fix their problems. It takes years of training to be able to provide mental health treatment. So all you have to do is actually be there as who you are to that person. So being a friend or being there as a sister, a brother, an aunt, or an uncle. Tip number 2 is to be caring and loving. If you suspect or know that someone is struggling with their mental health, just really show them that you love them and care about them. Because there's a lot of stigma surrounding mental health, it really feels good to let that other person know that it's okay if they're struggling and that you're there to support them. So you can do that by simply letting know the person that you care about them, just saying, hey, I really care about you, or even just doing small gestures like cooking their favorite meal, treating them to a coffee, giving them a hug. Just any small sentence or gesture can go a long way. Tip number 3 is stick to the facts and don't assume. If you suspect someone might be struggling with their mental health, don't assume that they're depressed or that they're anxious. Just notice those changes and bring them if you want to approach them into being that support to them. So don't approach someone who you suspect might be struggling with their mental health by saying, hey, I noticed you've been depressed lately. That might just create a resistance and the person might just say, well, I'm not depressed, what are you talking about? And then the conversation ends. Instead, just bring something that you can pinpoint. Something like, hey, I've noticed that you haven't been to practice lately. Is everything okay? Or saying, hey, I haven't seen you at church in the past few weeks. Just want to make sure you're fine. So this will create that first conversation in a non-confrontational way, and you're not assuming anything because, as we said, we're not mental health professionals and we can't diagnose them. So we just want to pinpoint something that we've noticed. Tip number 4 is creating a safe space for that person. The goal is not to get that person to admit that they're struggling with their mental health. The goal is to create a safe space for them to share what they're going through. And frankly, they might not want to talk to you about it. So the best thing to do is just let them know that you're there for them if they want to. So just saying, hey, maybe you want to talk to me, or maybe you don't want to talk to me about what you're going through, but just know that I'm there for you. And if they end up talking to you, well, it's time to put yourself aside and just be present with them. Just put your phone away, put any distraction away, and just listen. You can say sentences to validate their experience, like saying, this sounds really hard. I'm really sorry you're going through all that. Tell me more about it. And don't give any advice. Don't bring the conversation back to you with a similar experience that you've had and how you've dealt with it. Just be there and listen. Tip number 5, respect the person's pace. Everyone goes through their own journey at their own time. So if they're not in any danger or in a crisis, it's okay to just follow their pace. Don't force them to go get help. This will only create more resistance, and it can actually hinder your own relationship with that person. Tip number 6 is know the resource. We can't stress this enough, but get to know the mental health resources around you, at school, in your neighborhood, and help that person find the right one for them. And finally, tip number 7 is remember that recovery is not linear. If that person ends up getting professional help, it doesn't mean that every problem that they have and their struggles are gonna miraculously disappear. They're just still gonna have some good days and some bad days. And your role is, again, to just be there as a friend, as a sister, as a brother, and to help them through that journey.
We invite you to read from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 25, verses 31 to 44. Jesus is showing us here how to love another person. It's important that we don't just think our job as Christians is to bring someone to church. Instead, we can also be the church to that person in need. And finally, let's not underestimate the power of prayer. So pray for the person who is struggling, and pray for the Lord to also guide you to better help them. We can also be the church to this person by going and praying with them, seeing if they need something, visiting them, going for a walk with them. So all while respecting the person's space. You can't really force the person to get better. You can't force them to get help either. You can only encourage them.
So just to recap the tips, so we had remember that you're not a mental health professional, be caring and loving, stick to the facts and don't assume, create a safe space for the person, respect the person's space, know the resources, and remember that recovery is not linear. So try to remember those tips for when you are trying to be there to support someone that you love.